this seems like the right time, at least. We're starting to talk about how the government might respond to what has gone on. This is a very complicated problem, and there are a number of facets to it tonight. So we'll go to CNN's Jamie Mcintyre over at the Pentagon. There's first, before we get into military response, there is some news tonight out of there we ought to report on first. Jamie, go ahead.
Well, a couple of things, Aaron. First of all, the death toll has been slightly revised from 190 to 189 unaccounted for and believed dead. That's because it turns out that one person, a Department of Defense worker who was missing, turned out to have been a passenger on the plane, American Airlines Flight 77, and was therefore counted twice. The old number was 190, now it's 189, but Pentagon officials say that's still a preliminary number. It could change. On another front, Pentagon sources tell CNN that at least 4 U.S. fighter jets were scrambled in an attempt to intercept the hijacked jetliners on Tuesday, but none of the planes arrived in time to take any action. In the case of the first plane, the World Trade Center, Pentagon officials say that 2 armed F-15s took off about 8:52 a.m. from Otis Air National Guard base in Massachusetts. It was about 6 minutes after the first plane crashed into the tower. As the planes raced toward New York, they did not arrive until after the second jetliner crashed into the second tower, so there really wasn't much they could do. Air Force officials say that there wasn't really any discussion about the possibility of shooting down those planes because they didn't really arrive in time to do that. Now, in the case of the Pentagon, again, Air Force fighter jets were scrambled, this time out of Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. 2 F-16s took off about 9:35 in the morning. According to the FAA, that plane crashed into the Pentagon about 9:39, so it was 3 or 4 minutes before the incident took place that the planes took off, but they were more than 100 miles away. Now, the Pentagon says that it would take a presidential order for an American fighter jet to shoot down a civilian airliner, but on the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer tonight, Deputy Defense Secretary Paul Wolfowitz said that that might have happened if it was you were able to determine that the plane was not under the control of the legitimate pilot and was about to cause massive damage. But in both of these cases, the planes never got a chance to get close enough to even consider that.
Going what seems like a lifetime ago, back to Tuesday, we were talking at some point Tuesday about what flight controllers, the FAA, must have known, that they had planes that had veered wildly off course, nowhere near where they were supposed to be, and what happened after that. There's going to be a lot of texture to this, a lot of reporting still to be done on who knew what, when, how these orders went out, and ultimately, I suppose, what people were thinking was going on up there.
Well, here's what, they knew they had hijacked planes because they had reports of that, partly from the cell phone conversations and other data. So they knew planes were hijacked. They knew in some cases they had disappeared off the radar screen. But you know, if you're a fighter pilot and you go up and let's say you were to observe the plane approaching the Pentagon, there are some places where you could shoot down a jetliner like that and it would go into the ground and not that many people might get hurt on the ground. But this is a busy metropolitan area. Even if you were to have gotten there in time and you were able to determine that the plane was heading for the Pentagon and the pilot was able to get authorization, which would have had to come from the president, to shoot the plane down, there's no guarantee it might not have killed even more people on the ground than it did in this case, 189, if it hit some other busy area. For instance, the Navy Annex right up the hill from the Pentagon, or the busy shopping area, the Pentagon. There's a Pentagon City area and a Crystal City area that are just dense with buildings. It could have been even more tragic. So if the pilot had been able to get there in time, he would have had a heck of a decision to have to make.
Well, that's the other part of this, isn't it? I mean, it is, and I'm not sure there's a question here as much as there is just a kind of thought that imagine both the pilot, the commanders, his bosses, if you will, the people who would have had to make a decision to shoot down a commercial airline plane, a lot of Americans on board, shoot it out of the sky. I mean, it's almost as unthinkable as the ultimate outcome here.
Well, there is sort of a procedure for that. It would have involved the fighter plane would have had to come up alongside the plane. It would have tried to establish contact with the pilot, ask what his intentions were. He's not on his regular flight path. Might have tried to signal the plane. Then he would have had the radio for authorization. All of that would have taken time, and there wasn't that much time to react in this case. And even then, it would have been an agonizing decision that, again, only President Bush could have made for a U.S. military jet to shoot down a commercial jetliner with innocent civilians on board. It would have been an agonizing decision.
Jamie, thanks. It's unimaginable, at least to me. Thank you for your work tonight again. We'll all be working this weekend. I was going to say have a good weekend, but that seems about the silliest thing I could think of right now.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamie Mcintyre at the Pentagon tonight. As the nation struggles to